Sarah Mitchell sat in her small apartment, staring at her phone screen. Another wedding invitation. Another reminder that at 32, she was still single while everyone around her was getting married, having babies, or both. She tossed the invitation onto the coffee table, where it joined 3 others that had arrived that month. "Maybe there's something wrong with me," she whispered to her cat Whiskers, who was the only one who seemed to understand her these days. Sarah worked as a librarian at the local elementary school. She loved her job, loved working with children, and loved the quiet moments between the chaos of story time and helping kids find their next favorite book. But lately, even work felt heavy because of the whispers that followed her everywhere. It had started 6 months ago when her cousin Emma got married. During the reception, Sarah had overheard her aunts talking near the bathroom. "Poor Sarah," Aunt Linda had said, shaking her head. 32 and never been married, not even close. "She's just worthless at marriage," Aunt Patricia had replied with a cruel laugh. "Some women just don't have what it takes to keep a man happy. Look at her track record." The words had cut deep because they weren't entirely untrue. Sarah had dated plenty of men over the years, but every relationship had ended the same way. After a few months, they would all say some version of the same thing. "You're too independent," or "You don't need me enough," or "I feel like you're holding back." Sarah had tried to change. She had tried being more dependent, more clingy, more whatever they seemed to want, but it never felt real, and eventually, the relationships would crumble anyway. After Emma's wedding, the whispers had somehow spread. At family gatherings, church events, even at the grocery store, Sarah could feel the pitying looks and hear the hushed conversations. "Worthless at marriage" had become her unofficial title in their small town of Maplewood. The worst part was that deep down, Sarah was starting to believe it herself. On this particular Monday morning, Sarah was shelving books in the children's section when she heard a commotion near the entrance. She looked up to see a tall man with dark hair struggling to manage 5 children, who all seemed to be going in different directions. "Emma, don't pull on your sister's hair," the man called out, his voice tired but patient. "Jake, put down that book and stay with the group. Lily, honey, we talked about using our inside voices." Sarah watched as he tried to wrangle what appeared to be 5 kids ranging from about 4 to 12 years old. The oldest, a girl with curly brown hair, was trying to help by gathering the younger ones, but it was clearly a losing battle. Without thinking, Sarah approached them. "Hi there," she said softly to the man. "I'm Sarah, one of the librarians here. It looks like you could use some help." The man looked up, and Sarah was struck by how exhausted he appeared. His eyes were kind, but carried the weight of someone who hadn't had a full night's sleep in years. "I'm David Chen," he said, extending his hand. "And yes, I could definitely use some help. I promised them a trip to the library today, but I think I overestimated my ability to handle all 5 of them in a public space." Sarah smiled at the children, who had momentarily stopped their chaos to stare at the new adult in their midst. "How about we start with story time?" Sarah suggested. "It's starting in 10 minutes, and it might give everyone a chance to settle down." "Story time!" squealed the youngest, a little girl with pigtails. "I love stories." "That would be amazing," David said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you so much." As Sarah led the group to the story time area, she learned the children's names. There was 12-year-old Anna, the responsible one who was clearly used to helping take care of her siblings. 10-year-old Jake was full of energy and questions. 8-year-old Emma was quiet but observant. 6-year-old Lily was the chatterbox, and 4-year-old Ben was the baby who still seemed overwhelmed by the world around him. During story time, Sarah noticed how David watched his children with such love and attention. When Ben got scared during a part of the story about a dragon, David immediately scooped him up and whispered reassurances in his ear. When Anna raised her hand to answer questions, David beamed with pride. When Jake got restless, David gently redirected his energy by letting him help turn the pages. After story time, David approached Sarah while the kids browsed for books. "I can't thank you enough," he said. "You have a real gift with children. They all behaved better for you in 30 minutes than they have for me all week." Sarah felt herself blushing. "I work with kids all day. You get used to it. Besides, they're great kids." "You're clearly doing something right." David laughed, but it sounded tired. "Some days I wonder about that. Being a single parent to 5 kids isn't exactly what I planned for my life." Sarah wanted to ask what had happened, where their mother was, but it felt too personal for a first meeting. "Are you new to town?" she asked instead. "We moved here 3 weeks ago," David explained. "I got a job at the accounting firm downtown, Morrison and Associates. We needed a fresh start, and Maplewood seemed like a good place to raise kids." "It is," Sarah agreed. "Once you get past all the gossip and small-town drama." David laughed. "Is there a lot of that?" "More than you'd expect," Sarah said, thinking of her own situation. Just then, Lily came running over with a book about princesses, and Ben toddled behind her with a picture book about trucks. "Can we check out these books, Daddy?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Of course," David said. "Let's gather everyone up and get these checked out." As Sarah helped them check out their books, she found herself hoping she would see them again soon. "Will you be back next week?" she asked casually. "Definitely," David said. "This was the most peaceful library visit we've ever had. You're like a kid whisperer or something." As the Chen family left the library, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not romantic hope, necessarily, but just the hope that comes from meeting good people who make you remember that there's more to life than small-town gossip and failed relationships. The next week, Sarah found herself looking forward to Monday in a way she never had before. She had even worn her favorite blue dress and taken a little extra time with her hair that morning. When David and the kids arrived, they seemed more organized than the week before. Anna was clearly in charge of keeping track of everyone, and David looked slightly less frazzled. "Sarah," Lily called out as soon as she spotted her. "We're back. I read all my princess books, and Ben learned to make truck noises." "That's wonderful," Sarah said, kneeling down to Lily's level. "I can't wait to hear about your favorite princess." This time, after story time, David lingered while the kids picked out books. "I have to ask," he said. "Do you have kids of your own?" "You're so natural with them." Sarah felt the familiar pang of sadness that always came with this question. "No," she said simply. "I've never been married, never had kids, but I love working with them." "Well, you're missing out on the chaos, but you're probably getting more sleep than I am," David joked. Sarah laughed. "Probably. How long have you been on your own with them?" David's expression grew serious. 3 years now. My wife died in a car accident when Ben was just 1. It's been challenging." "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, her heart breaking for him and the children. "Thank you. It's been hard, but we're managing. Some days are better than others." Sarah wanted to say more, to offer comfort or help, but she didn't know what would be appropriate. "If you ever need anything," she said finally. "I mean, I know we just met, but if you need someone to help with the kids or just need an extra pair of hands, I'd be happy to help." David looked surprised. "That's incredibly kind of you. I might take you up on that sometime." As the weeks passed, the Chen family's Monday library visits became the highlight of Sarah's week. She got to know each of the children better and found herself genuinely caring about their lives. Anna was struggling with math, but excelling in English. Jake had an endless fascination with dinosaurs. Emma was shy, but had a beautiful singing voice. Lily was learning to read and was proud of every new word she conquered. and Ben was just beginning to string sentences together and had the most infectious giggle. David, too, was becoming more relaxed around her. He would tell her about the challenges of his new job, the difficulty of finding good babysitters, and the constant worry about whether he was doing right by his kids. "Sometimes I feel like I'm failing them," he confided one afternoon while the kids were absorbed in their books. "Their mother was so much better at this than I am. She would have known how to handle Anna's anxiety about starting middle school, or how to get Emma to open up more." "From what I can see," Sarah said gently, "you're doing an amazing job. Those kids adore you, and they're all turning out to be wonderful people. That doesn't happen by accident." David smiled gratefully. "Thank you. I needed to hear that today." It was during the 6th week of their library visits that everything changed. Sarah was helping Jake find a book about pterodactyls when she heard familiar voices near the entrance. She looked up to see her Aunt Linda and Aunt Patricia walking in with Linda's granddaughter. "Oh no," Sarah muttered under her breath. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, looking up from his book. "Nothing, sweetie," Sarah said quickly. "Why don't you go show your dad that book?" But it was too late. The aunts had spotted her, and they were making their way over with the determination of women on a mission. "Sarah, dear," Aunt Linda called out in that fake sweet voice she used when she was about to say something cruel. "How lovely to see you here at work." "Hi, Aunt Linda. Aunt Patricia?" Sarah said stiffly. "We were just talking about you the other day," Aunt Patricia said, eyeing David and the children with curiosity. "We were saying how it's such a shame that some people just aren't cut out for family life. Not everyone can handle the responsibility of marriage and children." Sarah felt her cheeks burning. She could see David approaching with the other kids, and she desperately wanted to disappear. "Some people," Aunt Linda continued, "are just worthless at marriage. It's nobody's fault, really. It's just how some people are made." The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah saw David's expression change as he realized what was happening. The children, sensing tension, had gone quiet. "Excuse me," David said, his voice polite but firm as he stepped closer to Sarah. "I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm David Chen." The aunts looked taken aback by his intervention. "Oh," Aunt Linda said, flustered. "I'm Linda Morrison, and this is my sister Patricia Williams. We're Sarah's aunts." "I see," David said coolly. "Well, it's interesting to meet you, because I was just telling Sarah how grateful my family and I are for everything she's done for us. She's been incredibly helpful and kind to my children, and I can't imagine anyone being more naturally suited for family life." Sarah stared at David in amazement. He was standing up for her to her own family. "Your children?" Aunt Patricia asked, clearly fishing for information. "Yes, these are my 5 kids," David said proudly, putting his arm around Sarah's shoulders in a gesture that surprised everyone, including Sarah herself. "And Sarah here has been wonderful with them. In fact, I was just thinking that any man would be lucky to have someone like her in his life." The aunts looked stunned. They clearly hadn't expected to encounter anyone defending Sarah, let alone a handsome single father with 5 children. "Well," Aunt Linda said weakly, "that's nice." "It certainly is," David agreed. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we were just finishing up here. Sarah promised to help us pick out some special books for tonight's bedtime stories." After the aunts left, Sarah stood there in shock. "Thank you," she whispered to David. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," David said firmly. "What they said was completely out of line. And for the record, everything I said was true. You are wonderful with my kids, and any man would be lucky to have you." Sarah felt tears pricking her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had stood up for her, had seen her worth, had made her feel like she was enough. "Daddy," Anna said quietly, "why were those ladies being mean to Sarah?" "Sometimes." "Sweetheart," David said, People say unkind things when they don't really know someone. Sarah is a good person, and we're lucky to have her as our friend. Sarah is the best, Lily declared. She gives the best hugs and knows all the best stories. She helped me find the coolest dinosaur book ever, Jake added. She's nice, Emma said shyly. And she smells like flowers. Even little Ben nodded his agreement. Sarah felt overwhelmed by their support, by the kindness of this family she had only known for 6 weeks. As they walked to the parking lot together, David spoke quietly to Sarah. I hope this doesn't sound too forward, he said. But would you like to have dinner with us sometime? The kids have been asking if you could come over, and I think it would be nice. You know, as friends. Sarah looked at this man who had just defended her to her own family, at these children who had accepted her so completely, and felt something shift inside her. I would love that, she said. As she watched their van drive away, Sarah realized that for the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about being worthless at marriage. Instead, she was thinking about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she had been looking for love in all the wrong places with all the wrong people. Maybe what she needed wasn't someone who would try to change her, but someone who would see her exactly as she was, and think that was enough. Maybe what she needed was exactly what had just driven away in a blue minivan full of children's laughter and the quiet strength of a man who knew what it meant to love unconditionally. As Sarah walked back into the library, she caught her reflection in the glass door and smiled. For the first time in a long time, she looked happy. And for the first time ever, she was beginning to think that maybe she wasn't worthless at anything at all. The dinner invitation came sooner than Sarah had expected. 3 days after the library incident, David called the children's section where she worked. Hi, Sarah. It's David. I hope I'm not bothering you at work. Not at all, Sarah said, her heart doing a little flutter at the sound of his voice. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Actually, the kids have been asking about you nonstop since Monday. Lily wants to show you her new drawing. Jake has about 50 dinosaur facts he wants to share with you. And Anna finished that book you recommended and wants to discuss it with someone who actually understands what she's talking about. Sarah laughed. And Emma and Ben? Emma wrote you a song, and Ben learned a new word that he wants to tell you about. So basically, you've become the most popular person in our house, which is saying something because we have a pet hamster. Well, I'm honored to rank above the hamster, Sarah said. So would Saturday work for dinner? Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and whatever chaos comes with 5 kids at a dinner table? Sarah found herself smiling so widely that Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, gave her a curious look from across the room. Saturday sounds perfect. When Saturday arrived, Sarah stood outside the Chen family's modest 2-story house. Holding a bouquet of wildflowers for the table and a bag of books she thought the kids might enjoy. She had changed her outfit 3 times, finally settling on a casual sundress that was comfortable enough for whatever activities might arise with 5 children. Before she could even knock, the door flew open and Lily launched herself at Sarah's legs. Sarah, you're here. Wait until you see my drawing. I made one of you and all of us at the library, and there's a dragon in it because Jake said every good story needs a dragon. I can't wait to see it, Sarah said, allowing herself to be pulled into the house. The inside of the Chen home was exactly what Sarah had imagined, lived-in, warm, and organized chaos. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, school papers were scattered on the kitchen counter, and there were books and toys everywhere. But it was clean and comfortable, and it smelled like tomato sauce and garlic bread. Sarah! Ben toddled over to her, his face beaming. Doggy. Doggy? Sarah asked, confused. That's his new word, David explained, appearing from the kitchen with a sauce-stained apron tied around his waist. He learned it yesterday when we saw Mrs. Patterson walking her poodle. He's been saying it to everyone since then. Doggy, Ben repeated proudly. That's a great word, Ben, Sarah said, kneeling down to his level. Can you say Sarah? Ben scrunched up his face in concentration. Sar. Close enough, Sarah laughed. Dinner was exactly the beautiful chaos David had promised. Jake spent most of the meal explaining the differences between various types of dinosaurs, while Lily provided dramatic sound effects. Emma sang her new song, which was a sweet melody about friendship that made Sarah's heart melt. Anna discussed the book Sarah had recommended with the enthusiasm of someone finally finding another person who loved reading as much as she did. Ben mostly focused on getting more spaghetti sauce on his face than in his mouth, while David orchestrated the whole event with the skill of someone who had clearly done this many times before. This is delicious, Sarah said, and she meant it. The sauce was clearly homemade, and everything was cooked with the kind of care that spoke of love rather than just necessity. Thanks, David said. Cooking is one of the few domestic skills I've actually managed to master since becoming a single parent. Well, this and doing laundry, though the kids might argue about how well I do that. Daddy shrunk my favorite shirt, Anna said with a grin. Now it fits Ben. Hey, that was a learning experience, David protested. Now I know to check the labels. After dinner, they all moved to the living room. The kids naturally gravitated towards Sarah, with Lily curling up next to her on the couch to show her the drawing, Ben climbing onto her lap with a picture book, and Jake sitting on the floor at her feet to continue his dinosaur lecture. Emma sat nearby, humming softly, while Anna sprawled on the rug with a new book. David sat in his chair, watching the scene with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. You fit right in, he said quietly. Sarah looked around at the children who had so easily accepted her into their evening routine, and felt something she had never experienced before, the sense of being exactly where she belonged. They're amazing kids, she said. You've done such a good job with them. Most days I feel like I'm just trying to keep my head above water, David admitted. But nights like this feels right? Their eyes met across the room, and Sarah felt a spark of something that had nothing to do with the children and everything to do with the man who was looking at her, like she was exactly what had been missing from his life. Daddy, Lily said suddenly, breaking the spell. Can Sarah come to my school play next week? I'm playing a flower, and I want her to see my costume. That's up to Sarah, David said, but I'm sure she's busy with work. I would love to come, Sarah said quickly. When is it? Thursday night at 7, Anna supplied. I'm helping with the lights. Jake is playing a tree, Emma added with a giggle. I'm a very important tree, Jake protested. Trees are essential to forest ecosystems. As the evening wound down and the children were sent to get ready for bed, Sarah helped David clear up the dinner dishes. Thank you for tonight, she said as they worked side by side in the kitchen. I can't remember the last time I felt so included. Thank you for coming, and for being so good with them. They don't usually warm up to people this quickly, but they adore you. The feeling is mutual. David turned to face her, his hands dripping with soapy water. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. What those women said at the library, your aunts. Is that something you hear a lot? Sarah felt her cheeks redden. She had hoped he might forget about that incident. More than I'd like, she admitted. Small towns have long memories for gossip. But it's not true. What they said about you being worthless at marriage, that's ridiculous. Sarah shrugged, trying to appear casual. I haven't exactly had the best track record with relationships. Maybe there is something wrong with me. David dried his hands on a dish towel and turned to face her fully. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You're kind, intelligent, funny, and wonderful with children. Any man who couldn't see that wasn't the right man for you. That's what my mom used to say, Sarah said softly. Before she died, she always told me that I just hadn't met the right person yet. Smart woman. When did she pass? 2 years ago. Cancer. She always believed I'd find someone who would love me for exactly who I am, not who they thought I should be. She was right, David said quietly. Whoever that person is, he's going to be very lucky. Their conversation was interrupted by thundering footsteps on the stairs as all 5 children came running down in their pajamas to say goodnight to Sarah. As Sarah drove home that night, she found herself thinking about David's words and the way he had looked at her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to be part of a real family, to have someone who saw her worth, to help raise children who already seemed to care about her. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable pattern. Sarah would have dinner with the Chen family once or twice a week, attend Lily's school play, where she cheered louder than anyone else for both the flower and the very important tree, and help with homework when David got overwhelmed with work deadlines. She was there the day Ben said his first full sentence, "Sarsar, read book." She was there when Emma finally sang in front of someone other than family, performing her friendship song for Sarah with tears of pride in her eyes. She was there when Jake won the school science fair with his project about dinosaur extinction, and when Anna got her first A+ in math after Sarah helped her with study techniques. Sarah was becoming part of their lives, and they were becoming part of hers. But not everyone in Maplewood was happy about this development. The gossip started slowly, as gossip always does in small towns. People began noticing Sarah's car parked at the Chen house on weekends. They saw her at the school play, cheering for children who weren't hers. They witnessed her at the grocery store with David and the kids, acting like a family. The whispers grew louder. "She's just setting herself up for heartbreak," Mrs. Patterson told her neighbor. "That poor man has enough on his plate without some desperate woman throwing herself at him." 5 children, Mrs. Henderson said to the other librarians. "What kind of woman gets involved with a man who has 5 children? She's clearly just trying to find anyone who will take her." "It won't last," Aunt Patricia predicted to anyone who would listen. "Sarah has never been able to keep a man interested. This will end just like all the others. Except this time she'll be disappointing 5 innocent children along with herself." The comments eventually made their way back to Sarah, as they always did. But instead of crushing her like they had before, she found herself getting angry. She was angry at people who judged her without knowing her, angry at a town that seemed to take pleasure in her perceived failures, and angry at herself for ever believing their cruel words. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening when Sarah was at David's house, helping Anna with a history project. They were spread out on the dining room table with books and papers when the doorbell rang. David answered it to find Mrs. Morrison, the town's unofficial moral authority and mother of Aunt Linda, standing on his porch with what appeared to be a casserole and a mission. "Mr. Chen," she said in her most officious voice, "I brought you a tuna casserole. I thought you and the children might enjoy a home-cooked meal." "That's very thoughtful, Mrs. Morrison," David said politely, though Sarah could hear the wariness in his voice. "Would you like to come in?" "Actually, I was hoping we could have a word privately. Perhaps on the porch?" Sarah's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what this was about. "I'm sorry," David said firmly. "But Sarah is helping Anna with her homework right now, and I don't want to interrupt them. Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." Mrs. Morrison looked taken aback by his response, but she pressed on. "Very well. I feel it's my Christian duty to warn you about the woman you've been spending time with. Sarah Mitchell has a history of failed relationships, and frankly, people are talking about her intentions with you and your poor motherless children." "Excuse me?" David's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "I'm simply saying that a man in your position needs to be careful. Sarah has been trying to trap a man into marriage for years, and now she's using your children to get to you. It's quite obvious what she's doing." Anna looked up from her homework, her face confused and upset. "What's she talking about, Daddy?" From the living room, Sarah could hear the other children going quiet, clearly sensing the tension. David stepped outside and closed the door behind him, but his voice carried clearly through the window. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, and Sarah had never heard his voice so cold. "I'm going to say this once, and I want you to listen carefully. Sarah Mitchell is one of the most genuine, caring, selfless people I have ever met. She has been nothing but kind to my children and helpful to my family. If people are talking, it says more about them than it does about her. But surely you can see—" "What I can see," David interrupted, "is a woman who shows up for my children's school events, who helps with homework, who listens to Jake's dinosaur facts for the 100th time without complaint, and who makes my family happier than we've been in a long time. If that's what you call trapping someone, then I'm happy to be caught." There was a long silence. "Furthermore," David continued, "if I hear that you or anyone else is spreading rumors about Sarah or making her feel unwelcome in this town, we're going to have a much less pleasant conversation. Are we understood? Well, I never— Good evening, Mrs. Morrison. Thank you for the casserole." When David came back inside, he found Sarah standing in the hallway with tears in her eyes. "You heard all that," he said. It wasn't a question. Most of it. Sarah wiped her eyes. "David, maybe I should go. I don't want to cause problems for you and the kids." "Absolutely not." David's response was immediate and firm. "Sarah, these people don't get to decide who I spend time with or who my children care about. And they certainly don't get to drive away someone who has become so important to our family." "Important?" Sarah asked quietly. David stepped closer to her, his eyes serious. "Sarah, these past 2 months have been the happiest my children have been since their mother died, and not just because you're wonderful with them, though you are. It's because they can see how happy you make me." Sarah's breath caught. "Happy?" "Incredibly happy. I look forward to our dinners all week. I find myself thinking about you when I'm at work. I love watching you with the kids, love listening to you laugh at Jake's jokes, love seeing how proud you are when Ben learns new words." He paused, reaching out to touch her hand gently. "I love you, Sarah. I love everything about you. Your kindness, your intelligence, your strength, the way you've embraced my chaos of a family without hesitation. I love that you argue with Jake about whether T-Rex was actually a scavenger, and I love that you let Lily paint your nails bright purple last week." Sarah stared at him in amazement. "You love me?" "I love you," he confirmed. "And I don't care what anyone in this town thinks about it." Before Sarah could respond, Lily's voice called out from the living room. "Daddy, is everything okay? Is Sarah leaving?" The worry in the little girl's voice broke Sarah's heart. "No, sweetheart," Sarah called back, not taking her eyes off David. "I'm not leaving." "Promise?" This time it was Emma's voice, small and uncertain. Sarah looked at David, saw the love and hope in his eyes, thought about these 5 children who had somehow become her world, and made the easiest decision of her life. "I promise," she called out. "I'm not going anywhere." As the children cheered from the living room, David smiled and pulled Sarah into his arms. "Does this mean you love me too?" he asked softly. "I love all of you," Sarah whispered against his chest. "More than I ever thought possible." Standing in that hallway, holding the man who saw her worth, and surrounded by the sounds of children who had claimed her heart, Sarah realized that her mother had been right all along. She had just needed to find the right person. Actually, she had needed to find the right people. And now that she had found them, she was never letting go. 3 months after that evening with Mrs. Morrison, Sarah had settled completely into life with the Chen family. She had her own key to the house, her own coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet, and her own designated spot on the couch during family movie nights. The children had stopped introducing her as Daddy's friend Sarah and started simply calling her our Sarah. Sarah had never been happier. For the first time in her life, she woke up each morning excited about the day ahead. She loved the chaos of morning breakfast rushes, the homework struggles, the bedtime story negotiations, and even the occasional sibling arguments that she had somehow become qualified to mediate. David had been talking about marriage in general terms for weeks, mentioning things like when we're married or after our wedding so casually that Sarah sometimes wondered if she had missed an actual proposal. But she didn't mind the uncertainty. She was in no rush to formalize what already felt completely natural and right. The children, however, had other plans. It started with whispered conversations that stopped when Sarah entered rooms. Then there were mysterious art projects that were quickly hidden when she approached. Anna started asking strange questions about Sarah's favorite flowers and colors, while Jake began interrogating David about the proper way to ask important questions. Emma had been caught humming "Here Comes the Bride" no fewer than 5 times, and even little Ben had somehow learned to say "wedding" with suspicious clarity. The conspiracy culminated on a Saturday morning in April when Lily announced at breakfast that the family needed to take Sarah on a very important picnic at Maplewood Park. "A picnic sounds lovely," Sarah said, spreading peanut butter on Ben's toast. "But shouldn't we check the weather first?" "The weather is perfect," Anna said quickly. "I checked 3 different weather apps." "And we already packed everything," Jake added. "The food, the blanket, the special supplies." "Special supplies?" Sarah asked, amused. "Nothing special," Emma said too quickly. "Just normal picnic supplies, like sandwiches and other normal things." David, who had been suspiciously quiet during this entire exchange, finally looked up from his coffee. "Well, if the kids want to have a picnic, who am I to argue? It is a beautiful day." Sarah looked around at the 5 pairs of eyes staring at her with barely contained excitement and realized she was clearly missing something important. "Okay, then," she said slowly. "Let's have a picnic." The walk to Maplewood Park took longer than usual because Ben insisted on stopping to examine every interesting rock and flower along the way, while the other children kept exchanging meaningful looks and giggling. When they reached the park, Anna took charge with military precision. "Sarah, you sit here on the blanket," she commanded, positioning Sarah with her back to the playground. "Jake, you and Emma go get the supplies from behind the big oak tree. Lily, keep Sarah distracted. Ben, just be cute." "Be cute is my specialty," Ben declared, climbing onto Sarah's lap. "What exactly is going on here?" Sarah asked, but she was laughing. The children's excitement was infectious, even if she didn't understand it. "Nothing," Lily said innocently. "We just wanted to have a nice picnic with our Sarah." "Our Sarah?" David repeated, sitting down beside her on the blanket. "I like the sound of that." "Daddy," Anna called from her position near the oak tree. "I think it's time." Sarah watched in confusion as Jake and Emma returned, carrying what appeared to be a large handmade sign, while Anna produced a bouquet of wildflowers from seemingly nowhere. "Time for what?" Sarah asked. But David was already moving, getting up from the blanket and walking a few feet away before turning to face her. His expression had changed from casual to serious, and his hands were shaking slightly. "Sarah," he said, and his voice carried across the park in a way that made her heart stop. "6 months ago, you were just the kind librarian who helped my chaotic family during story time. Today, I can't imagine my life without you." Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she realized what was happening. Around the park, other families had stopped their activities to watch, drawn by the obvious significance of the moment. "You have made my children happier than I ever thought possible after losing their mother," David continued. "But more than that, You have made me remember what it feels like to love someone completely, to want to build a life with someone, to look forward to growing old with someone. Jake and Emma held up their sign, which read, "Sarah, will you marry our daddy?" in colorful letters decorated with dinosaurs, flowers, and musical notes. Anna stepped forward with the wildflower bouquet. "These are from all of us," she said, "because we all want you to say yes." Lily bounced on her toes. "Say yes, Sarah, say yes." Ben clapped his hands from his spot on the blanket. "Wedding, wedding!" David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Sarah gasped. Inside was a simple but beautiful ring with a center diamond surrounded by 5 smaller stones. "One stone for each of my children," David explained. "Because this isn't just me asking you to marry me. This is all of us asking you to be our family. Forever." He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the park, in front of families and dog walkers and joggers, and all of Maplewood seemed to hold its breath. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, his voice strong and clear, "will you marry me?" Sarah looked at this man who had seen her worth when no one else could, at these 5 children who had taught her what unconditional love felt like and felt her heart overflow with happiness. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, yes, of course I'll marry you." The park erupted in cheers. The children rushed toward them, wrapping Sarah and David in a group hug that nearly knocked them all over. Strangers applauded from across the playground. Even the dogs seemed to be wagging harder. As David slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger, Lily declared loudly, "Now we're really going to be a family." "We already were a family, sweetheart," Sarah said, kissing the little girl's head. "Now it's just official." The engagement was everything their courtship had been, full of love, laughter, and the beautiful chaos that comes with 5 children. But planning a wedding in Maplewood while dealing with the town's gossip network proved to be its own challenge. The whispers started the day after the engagement was announced in the local newspaper. 6 months, Mrs. Patterson said to her bridge club. "They've only known each other 6 months. Mark my words, this will end in disaster." "Those poor children," Mrs. Henderson added, "getting their hopes up for a stepmother who clearly doesn't know what she's getting into." "Sarah Mitchell has never been able to commit to anything long-term," Aunt Patricia proclaimed. "This is just her latest attempt at playing house." But this time, Sarah found that the words didn't hurt the way they once had. She was too happy, too confident in her place in David's life and in the children's hearts, to let the gossip touch her. The children, however, were a different story. It was Anna who brought it to Sarah's attention. She appeared in the library one afternoon looking upset and angry. "Sarah," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Sarah immediately closed the book she was shelving and gave Anna her full attention. "Of course, honey, what's wrong?" "Some kids at school were saying things about you and Daddy. About how you're just using us to get married, and how you're going to leave once you realize how hard it is to have 5 kids. Sarah felt her heart clench. "Oh, Anna, I'm so sorry you had to hear that." "I told them they were wrong," Anna said fiercely. "I told them they don't know anything about you or our family. But Sarah, you're not going to leave, are you? Even when Ben has tantrums and Jake talks nonstop about dinosaurs and Lily gets marker on everything?" Sarah knelt down so she was at Anna's eye level. "Anna, sweetheart, look at me. I am not going anywhere. Not ever. I love your tantrums and Jake's dinosaur facts and Lily's marker stains. I love the chaos and the noise and the way Ben calls me Sarsar. I love being part of this family." "But what if it gets hard?" Anna asked, her voice small. "What if you decide you made a mistake?" "Anna," Sarah said gently, "do you remember when you were learning to ride a bike and you kept falling off?" Anna nodded. "Did you give up?" "No, but that's different." "How is it different?" "You kept trying because you really wanted to learn to ride that bike. Well, I really want to be part of this family." More than I've ever wanted anything. And just like you didn't give up on the bike, I'm not giving up on us. Anna threw her arms around Sarah's neck. I love you, Sarah. I love you too, sweetheart. All of you. Forever. But the gossip continued to escalate as the wedding date approached. 3 weeks before the ceremony, Sarah was confronted by a delegation of concerned citizens led by her Aunt Linda and Mrs. Morrison. They cornered her after church on Sunday morning while David was loading the kids into the car. Sarah, Aunt Linda said in her most patronizing tone, we need to talk to you about this wedding. What about it? Sarah asked, though she really didn't want to hear the answer. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Morrison declared. Marriage to a man with 5 children is not what you think it is. You have no idea what you're getting into. The novelty will wear off, Aunt Patricia added. What happens when the children test your limits? When they resent you for trying to replace their mother? When David realizes you can't handle the responsibility? You've always been flighty when it comes to relationships, Aunt Linda said. How do we know this won't end like all the others? Sarah felt the familiar curl of anger in her stomach. But this time it wasn't directed at herself. It was directed at these women who had spent years making her feel small and worthless. You want to know how this is different from my other relationships? Sarah said, her voice steady and strong. I'll tell you. In my other relationships, I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to be more dependent or more traditional or whatever I thought they wanted. With David, I get to be exactly who I am. She looked directly at Aunt Patricia. You want to know about handling responsibility? I've been helping David with 5 children for 8 months. I've been to school plays and science fairs and parent-teacher conferences. I've stayed up all night with sick kids and helped with homework and mediated fights over the last piece of cake. She turned to Mrs. Morrison. You think the children will resent me? Anna asks me to help her pick out clothes for school. Jake insists I listen to his reports about new dinosaur discoveries. Emma sings me to sleep when I babysit. Lily wants me to do her hair every morning. And Ben calls me Mama when he's really tired. Finally, she looked at Aunt Linda. And you think I'm flighty? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. David and those children are my family. Not because I'm trying to trap a husband or because I'm desperate to get married, but because I love them more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. Sarah took a deep breath and delivered the words that had been building inside her for months. For years, you've all told me I was worthless at marriage. You made me believe that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I was too broken or too independent or too something to ever have a real relationship. But you were wrong. I wasn't worthless at marriage. I was just trying to marry the wrong people. She straightened her shoulders and looked at each woman in turn. David sees my independence as strength, not weakness. He values my opinions and supports my dreams. He doesn't want to change me or fix me or make me into someone else. He loves me exactly as I am. And his children love me too. Sarah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. So thank you for your concern, but I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm marrying the love of my life and becoming mother to 5 incredible children, and if that bothers you, that's your problem, not mine. She turned and walked toward the car where David and the children were waiting, leaving the 3 women speechless behind her. Ready to go home? David asked as she reached the car. Sarah looked at him, at Anna giving her a thumbs up from the front seat, at Jake and Emma and Lily and Ben all grinning at her through the windows, and smiled. I'm ready, she said. The wedding day arrived with typical April unpredictability. Sunny one moment, threatening rain the next. Sarah woke up in her apartment for the last time, surrounded by boxes packed for her move to David's house, and felt nothing but excitement. Anna arrived early to help her get ready, carrying a small wrapped box. This is from all of us kids, Anna said shyly. We wanted you to have something special for today. Inside the box was a delicate bracelet with 6 charms, a book for Sarah's love of reading, and 5 small birthstones representing each of the children. "Anna, this is beautiful," Sarah said, tears pricking her eyes. "Daddy helped us order it, but we picked everything out ourselves. We wanted you to carry a piece of each of us with you today." As Anna helped fasten the bracelet, she said quietly, "I'm so happy you're going to be our mom, Sarah, really happy." "I'm happy too, sweetheart, happier than I've ever been." The ceremony was held in the garden behind the library, surrounded by the books and stories that had brought their family together. Sarah had chosen to walk down the aisle alone, not because she didn't have anyone to give her away, but because she wanted to make it clear that she was choosing this life freely and completely. But as she reached the back of the garden and saw David waiting for her at the makeshift altar, she realized she wasn't walking alone at all. Anna, Jake, Emma, Lily, and Ben had positioned themselves along the aisle like an honor guard, each one beaming with pride and excitement. As she passed each child, they fell into step beside her, so that by the time she reached David, she was surrounded by the entire family. "We're all in this together," Anna said simply, and the small crowd of wedding guests let out a collective awe. David's eyes were bright with tears as he took Sarah's hand. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "So do all of you," Sarah whispered back, looking at each of her children in turn. The ceremony was simple but perfect. David's vows spoke of finding unexpected love and the joy of watching someone embrace his children as her own. Sarah's vows promised to love not just him, but all of them, to be patient with homework struggles and dinosaur lectures, to celebrate every milestone and weather every storm together. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the children cheered louder than any of the adults. As David and Sarah kissed, Lily called out, "Now we're really officially a family." The reception was a potluck affair in the library's community room, with homemade food from friends and decorations created by the children. Sarah's wedding bouquet was the same wildflowers from David's proposal, and the wedding cake was decorated with 6 small figures representing their entire family. During the father-daughter dance, David surprised Sarah by inviting all 5 children to join them, creating a family dance that left barely a dry eye in the room. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a 3-day weekend at a nearby lake while David's sister watched the children, Sarah found herself face-to-face with Aunt Linda and Aunt Patricia one last time. "Congratulations," Aunt Linda said stiffly. "Thank you," Sarah replied graciously. "We hope you'll be very happy," Aunt Patricia added, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Sarah looked at these women who had spent years making her feel worthless and realized she felt nothing but pity for them. "I will be," she said confidently. "We all will be." As they drove away from the reception, David reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Any regrets, Mrs. Chen?" he asked. Sarah looked back at the library where their love story had begun, thought about the 5 children waiting at home for them to start their new life together, and smiled. "Only one," she said. David's face fell. "What?" "I regret that it took me 32 years to find you." David laughed and brought her hand to his lips. "Well, Mrs. Chen, we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." "The rest of our lives," Sarah repeated, loving the sound of it. "I like the sound of that." 6 months later, when people asked Sarah about her marriage, she would tell them it was everything she had never dared to hope for. The house was loud and chaotic and wonderful. There were homework battles and sibling arguments and sleepless nights when someone was sick. There were also family game nights and impromptu dance parties and quiet moments when Ben would fall asleep in her lap and Anna would tell her about her day and Jake would share his latest dinosaur discovery. There were moments when Sarah would catch sight of her reflection in a window or mirror and be amazed by the happiness she saw there. This was the woman she had always been meant to be. Not someone trying to fit into someone else's idea of what a wife should be, but someone who had found the family that fit her perfectly. And when people whispered about how lucky David was to have found someone willing to take on 5 children, Sarah would just smile. Because she knew the truth that her mother had always known. She hadn't been worthless at marriage. She had just been waiting for the right people to marry. And now that she had found them, 1 wonderful man and 5 incredible children, she was exactly where she belonged.